Hey, what's up, Carmilla series? So this is my review for episode 11, and the episode's called Adonis Interrupted. So basically, we see the prelude of episode 10 where Kirsch runs in and practically and very distraught and very scared with bruises on him from outside that he had got himself involved in. So apparently he volunteered to be part of the Adonis Festival, what not entailing to know that he was getting himself into trouble, which he didn't know. He was doing it for Danny, and I don't think at the time he understood what he was getting himself into, and Danny had nothing to do with it. So that's the unfortunate fact. After Kirsch has his dialogue and his conversation, and we see him talking, and Laura and Carmilla have also a word with him of how his volunteering with the Adonis Festival might have been the wrong fact to do so. And Carmilla does a smirky comment, of course, of saying, you know, Daddy did want kind of this deal, if that's what you want to think about this episode, of how he was doing it for her and not knowing that he was getting himself injured and possibly killed. But that's Kirsch for you in that moment. So after we see a lot of conversation and dialogue between Kirsch, Laura, and Carmilla, we see Mel. She barges in, and she's trying to pretty much harm him. So after his frantic places to hide and stuff like that, Carmilla and Laura stand in front of Kirsch, which I found very interesting. Because, I don't take Carmilla to save a dude bro from the Zetas to help him out. But I was kind of surprised that both Laura and Carmilla did stand up to Kirsch. I know they're best friends from season 1, so that made it very interesting fact of things happening and progressing that way. And the fact that, in terms of being protective, Carmilla will protect her friends, and she's doing it all for Laura, and that's what I love about this whole episode. After Mel says a few words of saying having to go through Carmilla and Laura, he says no, so he just, gets up, goes in front of Laura and Carmilla so that she doesn't harm them at all, and he'll be harmed. But surprise, surprise, we see Danny Lawrence just walk right in and trying to save him. So she interrupts the Adonis Festival, and now she knows that under her protection, she has no chance of being the Summer Society's president, and that affects her. She feels a little bit bad for interrupting the festival, but she feels like even though there's an injustice of what the Zetas have done to the Summer Societies in the past, that she is doing the right thing, even though she feels like it isn't the right thing, and she wanted to be Summer Society president for the show. And unfortunately, she had to do it because since season 1, I guess you could say they were close friends, and she's a little bit more protective of Kirsch now, I mean. Danny's being more protective of Kirsch, and how their connection now is being progressed into a big friendship, and how this interaction between Danny, Laura, Carmilla, and Kirsch progress into figuring things out. And then after that whole pretty much end of that scene between Danny, Kirsch, and Mel, we see Laura, Carmilla, and Danny have a conversation, and Carmilla looking onward, just making sure that Danny doesn't get too comfortable with Laura in terms of their conversation and getting close. I know she's very protective, but Laura's in this, I would say, love triangle, if you want to call it that, in terms of how they want to progress the storyline between each character. And this is the fact that we've seen it in season 1, where it's complicated, although Laura makes it more complicated than it sounds. And now that Danny has walked in and they have this conversation, we see Carmilla just pretty much looking onward and concerned, and Brody, and pretty much feels like she needs to protect Laura from Danny. And so she interrupts the scene a slight bit so that there's a fine line of how Carmilla wants to protect Laura. Because even though Laura might not notice the fact that Carmilla loves her so very much, she's still airheaded. And of course I said this in a previous review, but she's still airheaded. And I know Carmilla loves her, and this is the changes that we're seeing with Carmilla from season 1 to season 2, where like, I don't really care about you, Laura, to I really care for you, I'm going to protect you as much as I can, and we'll go from there and hope everything turns out fine. But we all know it's not going to turn out fine because there's a lot of perplexities and complexities in terms of how we want to run the episodes for future episodes of the Carmilla series. And we're going to see a lot of twists and turns coming up, but that's for future purposes going on forth. And I feel like having Carmilla, Danny, and Laura in this setting is making everybody perplexed, very a little bit uneasy, very onlooking, very Brody, very confused, and very protective of one another. So this is more of like a protective episode than anything else. And the dialogue is great and it's amazing. And we get to see the interconnections of the Summers and the Zetas and Laura and Carmilla, and how things will turn out for future episodes. But I feel like this progression now of having the interruptions happening in between the episodes is a pretty interesting fact, that we see a lot of protection and a lot of no, she's mine, no, he's mine, no, nobody owns nobody at this point. And I feel like everyone's gonna have to be protected of someone very soon. And if they don't, shit will hit the fan. Excuse my language. But shit will hit the fan if, you know, things are going the way they are as we see as the episodes progress. And I believe there's 35 episodes, so we've gotten halfway so far. And I hope this dynamic that Danny does not affect Carmilla and Laura's love relationship. We're going to see a lot of perplexities. And I feel like if we go where we think we're going, then we're going to see a lot of changes and a lot of difficulties and a lot of interruptions. And the progression is going to get more difficult and perplexed as we go through the season. But I feel like episode 11 is a prelude to future episodes, not just 12 and 13, but to future episodes of where the writers want to go. And it's going to be called the interruption episodes, with perplexities and everything else in between. So we hope everything turns out well, and hopefully you enjoy this. So I can't wait to see more episodes in the future. For now, SJ signing out. Peace and one love.